Hello and welcome to the Nyler 9 podcast. We are going to be talking about Charli XCX and her Brat era on this special. We will be joined by Kelly Doherty, a former writer with Nyler 9, who's now based in London and works with the Vinyl Factory and runs a club night called Satellite Towns. Kelly is the first person we thought of when myself and Andrea, who of course is here, the co-host, Andrea Cleary, said, let's do a Charli XCX episode. And who else than Kelly to ask? Because I remember when Kelly worked in the office, she was, as we discuss, a Pop 2 stan, the album that Charli XCX released in 2017, I think. And so definitely, like, more than anyone at that time, I was like, well, okay, she is so into Charli and all that buzz. And so Charli, the last time we had a big discussion about Charli XCX was in 2019 when the Charli album came out. So we haven't really had a deep dive into Charli since. So I think there's a really interesting chat to have about all of this stuff and where Charli is at now, how she's feeling now, all that stuff. It's a really interesting time to discuss Charli XCX, and a lot has happened since 2019 with Charli. And but also, I think anyone who hasn't heard Brat yet, you need to get on it. It's probably, for me, her single best album so far. Yeah, obviously, if you want to support what we're doing and keep the lights on in terms of supporting us and saying thanks, it's always patreon.com/Nyler9. I would have said a price of a pint, but last week, Andrea, I went to the Button Factory and a pint cost me $8.50. A pint of Moretti cost me $8.50.
€8
in the Button Factory. €8.50. So it's actually less than a pint now.
Sorry, they can't keep getting
Dublin
away with
prices. I know.
What the
fuck? Used to be able to say, it's the price of a pint. It was like, no, it's not the price of a pint.
Jesus.
It's the price of
2 coffees.
3/4 of a pint. Or 2 coffees, yeah. From $5 a month, you can support us. And that I shared that story in the Discord. The Discord is where everybody hangs out, all of the people who are associated and hanging out in the 909 crew. That is basically people who are engaged in music and what's going on in Irish music. There's meetups and all sorts. People were hanging out in the Meadows last week and all that kind of stuff. So it's if you've missed the community and forum vibe of pre-internet era when Charli started out, you'll find it in our Discord, and the way to get into that is by supporting us. The private supporters only community, and it's still a lovely place to be. And so yeah, a nice thing for to exist. Also, we give you perks like discounts for Lumo events and Nyler 9 events and playlists and all sorts of bits. So here and there. And so yeah, we're going to talk to Kelly about Brat. All right, it's the summer of the Brat. It's the summer of Brat. We are joined by Kelly Doherty. Hi, Kelly.
Hello.
It's been a while since we chatted, but I thought it would be good to get you back in to chat about all things Charli XCX. So, I mean, Brat has just been released, 6th studio album from Charli. I think there's a lot to unpack in terms of just where she's at in her career, and I guess I want to talk about what's really been interesting to me and has been, I'm sure, to you as well, is like Charli's position in the music industry has always been like somewhat not in the center, somewhat on the outside. She talks about those kind of feelings on this album as well. But like,
just purely in terms of like where she's at in the discourse, like where is Charli XCX at now at the moment? How is she feeling now in the discourse?
I think it's kind of interesting because I think for years with Charli, you had this kind of like, will she, won't she, about is she going to break through to like pop stardom, or is she going to like stay this kind of underground artist? And I think like, whilst obviously she's had a lot of strong outings, I think this record is the one that kind of bursts through as I'm doing neither of those things. I'm like forging this own path for myself. So I think, yeah, that's kind of like coming through quite interestingly in this album. I think it's like established her as like this like in-between thing that doesn't need pop stardom, but can like still get like a mass audience on her side.
I think that's really beneficial to the Charli narrative, because I think if we think about where we're at with pop stardom now, specifically with women in pop music right now, you are either Beyonce, Taylor Swift, you are either like, you know, the absolutely stratospheric, untouchable kind of pop queens, or you are a Chappell Rowan or a and then Charli is kind of taking up that like that upwardly mobile kind of middle ground, and she's been kind of chipping away at that for a really, really long time. And it's really interesting to have somebody in her position come out with an album now that is self-aware about that position, but is also kind of celebrating that position a little bit. Like I get the impression that Charli is looking at the success of a Taylor, and we'll get into the Taylor Swift of it all, I'm sure, at some stage when we're talking about the lyrics on the album. But I think she's looking at that and saying, you know, there is a reasonable place within the music industry that isn't that. And there are benefits to not being that. And there are actually a lot of benefits to being what I am, which is a kind of the insider's outsider, like the pop people's indie artist, you know, that sort of the edge, kind of existing on the edge and the periphery. And I think that's like it sort of just recalibrates what pop stardom looks like for women right now for me. I think she's just kind of edged her way in and said, no, this is a legitimate spot that I can sit in. And I don't necessarily want to go the trajectory of the others. And I think that that's really strong. It's like a really strong statement to make.
For me, Charli has always occupied a space that never quite felt her own. And I think in her early career, I've been revisited yesterday a lot of like the early stuff, and or like some True Romance, and all of she did a lot of collaborations. And if you're looking back at all the stuff that she did, all the remixes, it was like trying to fit into another, like when she came out, it was early blogosphere kind of, or like maybe late blogosphere kind of time. So there's a lot of engagement with like what was going on in the culture at the time. You see, like, if you talk about maybe some of the remixes that were from the early days, like there's an Odd Future remix, a Blood Orange remix, Mrs. Mister, any of these kind of names that you might remember from that time around 2012, 2013. And then she moved for me to like this, like top line great songwriter for other people, like the Icona Pop stuff and the Fancy, which she now has kind of reclaimed her own, the Iggy Azalea song. And then doing songs with what I think is really interesting. There's always been throughout her albums a lot of collaboration. She's done a lot of work with others and brought people into her sphere, where I think maybe this time, other than How I'm Feeling Now, this is the first time where it really feels like, I mean, is it hard? It's hard. I mean, How I'm Feeling Now is kind of like the lockdown album in a way, and it kind of just feel like that now a little bit, but and the way it was made, like with her fans and all that kind of stuff, like giving feedback and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is the first time where it's like, this feels like this is Brat is totally Charli as she wants to be. And for me anyway, it's my favorite part has always been since Vroom Vroom, when she started working with PC Music, and I was like, there's some really interesting great pop music happening here that also like groundbreaking and interesting and fun and zippy and all that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of this. Brat, when it comes out the gate, is pretty much like, yeah, it has 2, 3 like club bangers to start with, really. And you're like, whoa, okay, yeah, this is exactly, I think, maybe 2 or 3 albums ago, this is what I wanted Charli's to do. And I think she's now finally done it for me anyway. But also it's just so, like, maybe, like, she always felt like, she has talked about this as well, that she's like occupied a space that never quite fits. But I think the culture has now become caught up with her a bit more in terms of pop culture anyway, certainly. So like, there's nothing about this that feels like too far removed from what's going on now, that it's like, okay, she is a big part of it. You've seen this year, before the album came out, like, she's picked up fans all over the place, and like the Boiler Room set and all that kind of stuff. Charli is all about fun at the moment in terms of like the album rollout and all that stuff. But the album has much more to say other than that, right?
Yeah, and I think like it's interesting with the How I'm Feeling Now kind of reference. Obviously, that's kind of like her lockdown record. But I think almost in a way, I think How I'm Feeling Now very much opened up the gates for some of Brat's like most touching and kind of impactful elements. Because I think like when you're talking about how she dabbled and collaborated with so many different artists, I think I've always had a sense from her that whilst the songs standalone are excellent and I have a lot of fun with them, it was kind of hard to pin an identity to Charli's, like what her kind of internal voice was as an artist. And I think with like How I'm Feeling Now in particular, we got like a kind of glimpse behind the curtain of her vulnerability and how she actually feels about things. So I think it's, yeah, moving into Brat now, it is like, we've got the combination of everything that's giving her like a real voice of like, this is a party girl who wants to have a good time and wants everyone to have a good time with her. However, she struggles with all of the anxieties that come with that, the anxieties that come with fame, the challenges of being in your early 30s and choosing between going out clubbing or trying to settle down and have a family. Like, I think it's all kind of accumulating now to give like a very, like, there's like a deeper understanding of her as an artist. And I think that's what makes like the highs of Brat so good and the lows of it so good, that it's like, we can see that like full on high octane party energy, but we see what the bad side of that can be, or like what the more introspective side of that can be. And I think it's probably like one of the biggest words that have been thrown around about Brat at the moment is like how surprisingly vulnerable it is. Because I think the rollout kind of implied that it was going to be like a full on high octane party album, and that was kind of like the full thing with it. Whereas like listening to it, it is surprisingly like quite emotional at points. I know that I've a few people I know have like been a bit back and forth about I think about it all the time, but that's one of my favorite tracks off the album. I think it's like a really interesting perspective to, you know, see someone who's so like full blast about aesthetic and partying being like, well, maybe I'd love to be a mom actually, and maybe motherhood is beautiful. So I think, yeah, it's really nice seeing that side of her as an artist, and I think it really grounds the party side of things. And obviously the same with like the Sophie tribute track, and you know, there is just so much vulnerability on the record that I think really will stand the test of time in comparison to maybe some of her other work, which I think is a bit more of the moment, and it's for just having a good time to.
Well, doesn't that come from like the fact that she has been in the industry for so long as well? So she's done the surface level pop songwriting. She's done the surface level kind of almost attention grabbing stuff as well. And this is like, we've talked about it before in the context of self-esteem, for example. So an artist who has gone through the mill in a lot of ways, and then reaches, when you're in your 30s, things change and you're kind of like, oh, I have deeper feelings about certain things that are, and I think it's really good that she has like vocalized that on the records as well. But there's also nuance there, like there's like talking about, yeah, it's so interesting because most, like, you're not probably going to get Olivia Rodrigo or anyone like that talking about how she wants to be a mother in the context of her career just yet. But that kind of experience that she's had and that she's built up allows her to kind of explore those topics in the context of something like kind of certainly more like an upbeat record. And yeah, like there's a lot more of admissions of like insecurity and not feeling like she was good enough for her partner or to be in the scene or be even in the industry, talking about Sophie as well. And there's kind of like some regret there about not spending more time with Sophie, even though you would have been like, oh, I'm sure there were like best of friends, but like it kind of suggests that like maybe that Charlie was a little bit, taken aback, or like maybe not quite as close, or maybe a little bit like on the outside, or for whatever reason, she wasn't cool enough or whatever to hang out with Sophie or something. There's kind of those suggestions. And I think that's really interesting. Yeah, like there's that song Rewind on the album, like talking about, it's kind of an inner monologue of all of the things that happens to somebody who's trying to be a pop star or is a pop star, like talking the preoccupations of the mind, like thinking about Billboard magazine, or like your calorie count when you go to a fancy restaurant, or all of these kinds of things that she is shining a light on that I've never heard other people do. And they're very specific things, but they're so probably universal to all of those people. This is like a really good version of that crap show, that HBO show, The Idol, last year, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
The weekend
I think
thing.
that it has a lot, like Brat has a lot to say about youth, that I've been sort of thinking about a lot while listening to it over the past like less than a week it's been out. And I think that she's doing something that a lot of artists, female artists in their 30s, are engaging with the idea of motherhood, the idea of maybe choosing not to be mothers. But what I think Charli has done that I haven't seen other people do is engage with the idea of the infantilization of women who do not choose to have children, and how it can sometimes be framed as an extension of adolescence, that you are choosing not to have children because you want to be young for longer, or not even that you want to be young for longer, that you will be young for longer because you don't have this kind of weight of responsibility and all of the things that we kind of ascribe to motherhood in terms of growing up and settling down and all of those things. And I think even the name of the album being Brat is, that's a word we use about children. We do not use it about adults. We do not use it about women in their 30s. We use it about children, and we use it about it girls, like the sort of like 2000 it girls, which is also a very big part of this album as well. And I think that the engagement with youth and the extension of youth and the toll that can take on somebody, like you were saying, Kelly, like the sort of emotional toll that being a party girl can take on the party girls. It kind of it humanizes the person who loves to party, and it sort of takes away the negative sort of stereotypes about a woman in her 30s who likes to drink or likes to take drugs or likes to go out to parties or is a DJ or whatever it is. And it picks apart those very problematic ideas of like when you should grow up and how you should grow up. And I think what she's providing here is an alternative to the settling down narrative. And also crucially for me, which is something that, so I think with the Taylor Swift route, with Torture Poets Department, there was an engagement with the idea of motherhood on that album, in terms of like, there's a dichotomy between being a mother and having a career. Charli doesn't make that connection here. It's not about, do I want to be a mother or do I want to be a musician? It is, do I want to be a mother, or do I think it actually just stops there. I think it's just, do I want to be a mother? And it doesn't frame it in terms of career or goals or, success or all of those kind of capitalistic things. She's dealing with it on much more of a kind of a personal, introspective sort of level. And I think it's really brave, and it's a perspective I just haven't heard in music yet, that it's just this sort of like, well, if I have children, maybe I won't be able to have as much fun. And that perspective is completely fine and valid, and it doesn't make you childish. It doesn't. And I think we do infantilize women who make that decision for that reason. And she's coming out and saying, no, I'm not, like, that's not what my path is right now. Maybe it will be, but it's not right now. And I think that's a really, really important perspective to have in pop culture, for sure.
I think what's interesting with the record as well is it's one of the first kind of I suppose like considerations of womanhood that's come out of a major pop album in a while that has felt specific. I think we've had like a lot of pop records by major female artists who are vaguely talking about womanhood, but it feels like a very universal, sometimes, to be cynical about it, sometimes feels like a bit like kind of, I don't know, fake feminism type approach to pop music. Whereas I think she is like thinking about womanhood, and it's such a specific version of it that's her actual experience that makes it feel real. Whether that's talking about like jealousy or having like rivalries with other female artists, or whether that's talking about motherhood in a way that isn't like all consuming, but in an almost like curious sort of way. Like it feels like a very sincere observation of her experience of being a woman, which I think is nice, because I think for a long time we've been just almost like platitude-y type conversations about womanhood and pop music, and yeah, I think it's interesting as well. I guess the girls are so confusing discourse or whatever. I think we've had like this like very gentle like girl supporting girls narrative in pop music that hasn't really meant anything for a long time, but it's been there. Whereas like it's refreshing to hear like Charli sing about like a rivalry she has with another woman, and not just trying to sanitize it for like sloganism and jealousy. It's nice. Like, yeah, and I think it's good, because I think maybe the type of feminism that like kind of came out of pop music in like the 2010s, it's like perfect womanhood in a sort of way. It's like I'm a really nice woman, and I'm nice to all women, and that is and you can't be flawed within that, but like that's not reality. And I think it's
and I am also a successful businesswoman, and I am in the board meetings, and I am slaying all day as a businesswoman. And all of that kind of feminism, it sort of ends up becoming this kind of like very essentialist, very like girls supporting girls, like all women must support all women at all times. And that, I suppose, had its place in you know, the late 2000s, 2010s, you know, the girl boss era, the kind of very like moving into the fourth wave. But I think now, I as a feminist, but also I as a music lover, I'm so much more interested in personal perspectives on feminism and womanhood than I am, you know, these sort of like very platitude-y, as you said, kind of statements, or whether they're musical statements or whether it's who you're collaborating with and things like that. So it's, you know, yeah, I just think she's doing like real good work on this, like good feminist work, good songwriting work, good, like it feels like a complete portrait of a moment in time for her. And it also feels like a moment that is going to, the perspectives that she holds on the album, maybe all of this has already passed. Maybe she's already dealt with all of this. Like it is such a kind of a snapshot of who she is in the culture right now. And that, and there's nearly a knowingness that once this album comes out, all of this is going to be changed, because she knows, I think she knows that this album is going to push her further into the stratosphere. It's going to push her further into the mainstream. So it's nearly like she's taking stock of a moment right before she goes through the event horizon into pop stardom. And I think that's a really interesting perspective as well. That this is probably the last time we're going to hear from Charli where she is singing as an outsider. And I think she knows that as well. So she gives it its weight on the album, which makes me excited for what she's going to do, singing from a place of like stardom, do you know?
For sure.
Well, let's take a bit of Girls So Confusing.
Yeah, I don't know if you like me. Sometimes I think you might hate me. Sometimes I think I might hate you. Maybe you just wanna be me. You always say let's go out, so we go eat at a restaurant. Sometimes it feels a bit awkward, cause we don't have much in common. People say we're alike, they say we've got the same hair. We talk about making music, but I don't know if it's honest. Can't tell if you wanna see me falling over and failing, and you can't tell what you're feeling. I think I know how you feel. It's so confusing sometimes to be a girl.
All right, that's Girl So Confusing from Brat. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the really interesting takeaway from Brat. I think, like, on the surface, certainly it feels like, yes, this was the big pop banger album that we wanted, but also there's plenty here to talk about in terms of insecurity and vulnerability, and also just like real life as well. Like, I mean, how does this stack up compared to her previous albums, especially the last two? Because I feel like, you know, this is her sixth album. It's been a couple of years since Crash came out. Kind of thought Crash was going to be it was a big album. It is a big album, but I always thought it was going to be like the true breakthrough moment. But like, I mean, did she have it's kind of funny to be talking about Charli XCX as if she hasn't broken through, because she has, clearly, like she has in a way, but like she's never going to be Taylor or Olivia Rodrigo or whatever, because she's more interesting than that as well. But like, she's also, I don't know, where do you think Charli sits now? Because she's clearly wondering that herself on this record.
Yeah, I think I've always struggled with like how famous Charli XCX actually is, because I feel like for me, surrounded by like queer people, I always assumed Charli XCX was like one of the biggest artists in the world. I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, like going onto her Wikipedia page and checking like her chart like listings and being like, oh wait, hold on, Charli XCX is not the biggest artist in the world by any shake. But I think it's interesting, because I think there's always this like thing in her career where she has experimental album and then she has like pop reaching album, and there's always like a battle between the two. And I think with like Crash was obviously her most recent, very overt kind of pop reaching album. And I really enjoy Crash. I think it's a really fun album. But I feel like, yeah, it's interesting. I feel like this time it's a more interesting record. Brat's a much more interesting record, but it's connecting with people a lot more. And I think like she's set for like, she's got like her highest US chart, I think, landing for a long time now. But yeah, I think at the moment she feels kind of like people's princess type vibes, where it's like she's not the mega star and she's not part of the monoculture, but she's like she's still got that underdog vibe. She feels like she's of the people. People really relate with her, but she's still like a huge star, and she has the energy of a huge star as well, which I think is important, especially when a lot of people at the moment who might be on the precipice of fame are still doing the kind of like relatability thing. Charli is still like, I think she embraces like the superstar energy, which I think people like. Yeah,
there was a really interesting tweet about, I mean, this is in the context of, say, the Black Keys and all that, playing the arena tour and then those not selling out. I think the Charli XCX and Troye Sivan US arena tour was a few weeks ago anyway, undersold. And I saw some tweets about that, how maybe Charli isn't at that level yet, and like it's a joint tour with Troye Sivan, so you kind of thought they might be, but that's kind of an indication of like,
there's only so many gay people in the world, though, is the thing. But you think you think that would get all of them in one place, but there's still fewer of them than there are straights.
Well, America is a big place. There's a lot of,
yeah. Both of them on stage at the same time.
They should have combined Charli XCX and Sabrina Carpenter.
Yes.
And then you'd have all the straights and the queers in one stadium.
Have you seen that clip? I don't know what podcast it is. I just saw a clip on TikTok, and it was this guy being like, do you know what's great to see? Sabrina Carpenter, because there is no question mark over that woman. She is the straightest woman we have had in pop music in a long time. And it's nice to see the straight girls get their moment. No one is looking at her and having a kind of a conspiracy theory about her being gay. No, it's true. It's true. Give it up for the straight girls.
One's for all my straight girls. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. But also, like, if you look at, like, based on, I know Spotify is just one platform. It's always worth saying that, like, Spotify isn't the be all and end all of streaming, even though sometimes we think about it like that. But like, Charli has more streams than the 1975 monthly on Spotify. And is that just because at the moment she's, I mean, I can't look at the historical data, but like that suggests she's more popular. But I think, yeah, I don't know, it's just an interesting one. Like her fella, especially in the context of the album as well. She's talking about being backstage at her fiance, isn't it?
She calls him boyfriend
the night 75
on the album.
Yeah. So fiance now, but he's also, was he a bit involved in this album a bit?
Yeah, as far as I know,
I think he was involved.
Yeah,
and he's been with her DJ performances as well, like a heavy presence.
Yeah, and I think that they worked here. I was reading an interview with her, and she was kind of talking about George and like their relationship and how they talk about music constantly at home, and they're constantly sharing ideas. And so even if he's not like, you know, named as whatever on the album, she seemed to say like he's all over this, like, because that's just how, you know, sort of collaboration with your partner sort of works. And I think it's the same. There's rumors that he's working on some kind of electronic bass kind of solo stuff. We can all cross our fingers that would be soon, because it's very exciting. And I think it's the same with him. Like, I think they get really, really good stuff out of each other, really good ideas out of each other. And like even the like, I want to dance with George moment on this album, it like tickles my brain. I love it so much. I love that track. And I just love that she's, you know, just giving her boyfriend a little shout out. That feels old school. You know, it feels very sweet.
But yeah, just circling back on the 1975 versus Charli XCX tour thing. I wonder, is there something there in like Charli XCX's reputation as a live artist? Because I wonder, does she have as much of a reputation as a live artist as, say, the 1975 would? Because, like, I mean, everyone talks about a 1975 tour. They're very much a touring band. Whereas, like, Charli, I almost feel like, obviously, she's a fun performer and stuff, but I feel like you don't really hear people talking as much about how amazing a Charli performance is. She almost does seem like more of a listening at home artist.
Yeah,
a little bit. I
think so.
I wonder, is there more to build up on the live side?
Yeah, because I think like if she has more streams in the 1975, that's one thing, but she is not selling out Madison Square Garden is the thing. So I think that there is that kind of disconnect between like the 1975 sellout stadiums. They are such a bigger live band than they are. Like, they're probably the biggest band in the world that the most people don't know, in terms of like the kind of venues that they sell out, like constantly. You know, they've been touring for like a year and a half. They're absolutely massive. But if you go up to someone in the street, it's very likely that the last year aside, it's very likely that a person will not have heard a song by them. Like, they don't get played in the radio. So I think that's right with Charli, is that she is music for house parties. She's music for your headphones. But the Brat, like, has the Brat tour been announced? Do we have any information about that? Is there a tour coming?
Is there
because
a tour?
this could be the moment, you know, like the Brat tour could be the thing that does it for.
I think it's all the ones with mostly with Troye Sivan in America anyway. That goes for most of the year.
But I think if she does a UK and
London,
Europe tour,
Birmingham,
that will
Glasgow.
be massive.
Yeah, she's playing with Shy Girl in November, London, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, December. But yeah, I mean, I've seen her before play at, was it the Picnic? And maybe, was it Primavera as well? Like, it's a great show. It's a fun show. And like what I said earlier on, like, she reclaims those songs she had co-writes on, or basically wrote the Iconopop and Iggy Azalea songs, and you're like, yeah, she wrote those. Like, they're her songs now, more than anyone else. And you know, obviously she has a number of key songs from her past, like Boys and stuff like that, which, you know, people really know as well. But then she's also, like, even in recent years, like, she's done less of it, but like collaboration with Tiesto or whatever, like, she's done less of those kind of reaching out of her lane kind of collaborations. And that's why I think Brat, to me, is the most interesting album she's done. It's also got the indie sleaze hit Von Dutch Thank you. Love it. It's so, but yeah, I was talking, so the production on this, A.G. Cook is majorly involved. There's also a track from Hudson Mohawk, which I only just realized this morning, who does Talk he's responsible for that. There's Finn Keen and Circuit and Gestafelstein. And there's also, there was an expanded edition with 3 extra tracks, which I don't know if you got to listen to those yet. I'm sure you have, Kelly. The 3 tracks, Spring Breakers, Hello, Goodbye, and Guess. Definitely giving a fun B-side vibe to Proceedings, and 100 Gex involved in Guess as well. So, like, I mean, the shorthand for Brat is it's more hyperpop focused. It's more vulnerable. It's peaks and valleys. It's her best album. What I do aside now, I do love, if you look on streaming at the moment, she's changed all the album covers from her previous albums to the style of Brat. So all of them now look like that kind of slightly blurred font, and I think that's kind of cool.
I like that she named the kind of extended edition album Brat, and it's the same, but there's 3 more songs, so there's not. It feels like a real, like, not shade, but it's, you know, the way that artists are releasing the album, and then
we all know this is.
We know who we're talking about here. But that person is by no means the only person who does that. But, you know, it's here's the Midnight's version, and here's this version, here's that version, and this is just like a white background, black text, Brat, and it's the same, but there's 3 more songs, so it's not, and it really feels like, you know, I have to do this in order to promote my album. Please listen to it. Please stream it. Do you know? Yeah. I'm sorry I had to do it this way, but this is just the way the fucking music industry works now. So just stream it. Stream Brat, for fuck's sake, is what she could have called it. But yeah, I think, like, Kelly, I wanted to ask you about the kind of Charli-Sophie relationship. It's not something I'm super familiar with, but obviously Sophie, like, the relationship with Sophie is kind of on this album. If you could give a bit of an overview of, like, what that relationship was like.
Yeah, I guess they collaborated quite a bit together. I think Sophie was kind of responsible for bringing out some of the more, like, experimental sides of Charli's sound, when we kind of saw her move a bit more into the, like, hyper pop, or I guess even more interesting than hyper pop, I think, like, the kind of more industrial elements of Charli's career, and just, like, the more overtly experimental stuff came through collaboration with Sophie. I might be wrong with this. I think there was also, like, there's still quite a few unreleased tracks that they were meant to be working on together and stuff. But yeah, definitely she's had.
I was actually listening to a couple of them during the week. There were the kind of tracks that ended up on Hype Machine briefly around that time, and around the Vroom Vroom era for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think definitely, like, her, you can see Sophie's stamp on, like, Charli's career ever since. Like, it is that, like, willingness to take more experimental, like, club leaning chances, and I feel like most of the stuff that Charli's done that has, like, been particularly adored or seen as, like, you know, innovative has kind of a little bit of a Sophie stamp on it, like the pop 2 sound and all this type of stuff. And obviously she's still got that, like, hyper pop energy, and she's still working with people like A.G. Cook. But I think, there's something, I guess I feel like Sophie and Charli are both, like, visionaries of their respective corners of the music industry. So collaboration between them is amazing. But I guess, I suppose with So I, we're, like, you are seeing maybe that they weren't as, like, intertwined maybe as people thought, or there was, like, not as much closeness between them. But I guess you never really know with people's, like, careers. I don't know. We see people together in the public and we're like, oh, they must be best friends, but I guess you don't really know what the crack is behind closed doors.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting perspective for her to share on this album, that, like, you know, she's saying this was much more of a mentor-mentee relationship. Like, we weren't as close, where, like, she, you know, her adjacency to Sophie and her collaboration with Sophie kind of gives a, you know, there's a credibility that is afforded to Charli because of that, and because Sophie was so adored and so respected as an innovator. It's an interesting thing to come out and say, like, maybe that relationship is getting a little bit too much, like, not credit, but like, you know, it's not what you thought it was. It's not what you saw it to be. It was more complicated than that. And I think that that's a really interesting and brave perspective to have when she could have equally written a song that was, you know, talking about how they were best friends and, you know, and if that didn't feel truthful to her, you know, that didn't feel truthful to her. So she didn't do it. And I think that that's a really interesting kind of perspective that this album kind of affords. Cause I didn't really know much about their relationship. Like I knew about their collaborations, but I didn't really know how much everybody sort of saw them together and assumed that they were very close and so on. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Kelly, do you have favorite tracks on the album? Like tracks that when you were first listening through it?
Yeah. So I guess I really like Talk Talk. I think it's a really fun track. I think that's like it's the closest I think to like an overt like summer song on the record. It kind of has the energy of like, I know some tracks that I like really enjoy by like Sharda and that kind of like bouncy, summery type sound. And yeah, I think I was reading about it this morning, and it's about George, and she was giving all the lyrical context of like following him to the bathroom at the Brit Awards, which is hilarious information to reveal about yourself. But yeah, so I really enjoyed Talk Talk. It's probably one of the most like overt party tracks on there for me. I think about it all the time. It's like a huge one for me. I really love how it's done.
Well, let's play a bit of Talk Talk first.
Yeah.
And you're surrounded by friends, and I'm just wondering what they know. I wish you'd talk, wish you'd talk, wish you'd talk, wish you'd just talk to me. I wish you'd talk, wish you'd talk, wish you'd talk, wish you'd just talk to me. I think you're getting closer, 'cause I've been getting nervous. I wish you'd talk, wish you'd talk, wish you'd talk, wish you'd just talk to me.
Yeah, I really love I think about it all the time. I think I really enjoyed the lyrics. We've obviously talked about it a bit already, but I just really love her delivery on the track as well. It feels very like I've been trying to pin it for ages of what it kind of reminds me of. It reminds me of like a little bit of like Girlfriend of the Year from like the kind of early PC music era. But I really love her delivery on it. I feel like we've talked so much recently about like indie sleaze revival and like the comeback of that entire genre, but I feel like I haven't seen much of it tangibly actually being released. Whereas this track just feels so like, it feels so like Enemy 2007, 2006, and like, but like with a new spice to it. I really love the way her vocals come across on the track. I just think how like plain spoken the lyrics are. I think that like, she's a radiant mother and he's a beautiful father is a beautiful lyric. And yeah, I think it's a really great song. I love how direct it is, and I'd love to hear Charli kind of perform like that a bit more, I think.
I was walking around in Stockholm, seriously thinking about my future for the first time. It was ice cold, playing demos on my iPhone. I went to my friend's place and I met their baby for the first time. How sublime, what a joy, oh my, standing there, same old clothes she wore before, holding her child. Yeah, she's a radiant mother and he's a beautiful father. And now they both know these things that I don't. I think about it all the time, that I might run out of time. But I finally met my baby, and a baby might be mine. 'Cause maybe one day I might, if I don't run out of time. Would it make me miss all my freedom? Think about it all the time. I think about it all the time, that I might run out of time. But I finally met my baby, and a baby.
Yeah, there's a very like open and like very honest, what feels very real admission at the end of that, like, and kind of like a conversation with her partner. Is like, so we have a conversation about, should I stop my birth control because my career feels so small in the existential scheme of it all.
I love that line.
You know, anyone
that is such a beautiful
it's great.
line.
I mean, like one who's like, I mean, I had a kid 6 months ago, but like before that, you're like, oh, should we do it? And, well, trying to decide whether you should or like, and then, people who don't, and you're like, you're trying to figure out, like, it is obviously easier sometimes to not do it, but like, I think she does capture a lot of that like inner dialogue about like, should I, will I, well, what will happen? What will change a little bit? Yeah, and I think there's definitely a second part to that where it's like, oh yeah, no, this will change it. But I love that kind of like, it's inspired by that meeting of her friend and their child for the first time. So it's kind of like, it feels very real to me. Because I've certainly had that in the past when you're like, when your friends have had babies before you and you're like, oh, wow, this has changed everything in it, but it's also like so different. And I really identify with that line of like they know something I don't. And you're like, because that was something I would always think about. I was like, what does it feel like? What is it like? What am I missing out on, kind of thing.
Yeah,
well.
I think
it's
a really like, my career feels so small in the existential scheme of it all. Like, obviously the existentialism of having a child and the sort of, the stuff that I can't understand not being a mother, but like that, the feeling of literally watching time pass and watching your life pass by watching another human grow. Niall, you were saying before we recorded, you were away from your partner and your baby were away from you for a week, and when you held him again, he felt different and bigger, and it's like the way that time passes is completely different. And but I think it's also, my career feels so small in the existential scheme of it all. It's also like, it's about people getting married, and it's about people, becoming grown-ups and entering this next stage of their life. And if your career is the thing that you are most focused on, it can feel, for a lot of people and a lot of women especially, that the career of the people who are getting married and having babies and doing that sort of path, they also have careers, but they also have this other stuff, whereas you just have the career, quote unquote, just have the career, and how small that can feel. And I think that line just sort of really like captures that. I think it's the best line in the song. It's so yeah, I don't know. The first time I heard it, I was like, whoo. I think like out loud, I went like, whoo, like, Charli, you didn't have to come for us like that. Like,
yeah. And in fairness, there has been a lot of like songs about motherhood recently, and albums about motherhood, but there hasn't been a lot of like those kind of questions that happened before. And I think that's
this is
really
what happens when we
well.
let women in their 30s still have pop careers. It's quite good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How the culture changes. It's like, oh yeah, you don't. Not all pop music has to be about being a teenager.
Yeah, I think another track that I thought was quite interesting, just in the context, because I think it's a little bit separate from the rest of the record, is Mean Girls. It's the one. It's produced by Hudson Mohawk, and it's about.
I'm so glad you chose
that. It's like inspired by like the Red Scare podcast. I think it's a great track, and I'm obsessed with the lyrics of it. But I just
tell me I saw this reference, and I didn't know what the Red Scare podcast was.
Oh, Niall, you sweet summer child.
I know. Yeah.
You're so liberated.
I've heard the name, but like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I guess the Red Scare podcast is, I initially started out as like a left-leaning podcast, but it's basically, it's presented by two women who, one is Dasha, one is Anna something, I can't remember her surname, but it basically started out as kind of like a pro-Bernie, part of that kind of New York Dime Square scene, but then they just suddenly kind of went down this rabbit hole of these two women who've become like quite Catholic, but in like a performative way.
Yeah.
Their whole thing is kind of being mean, and like trad wife values, whilst also not really like embodying them. It's a very like internet 2024 phenomenon.
It's the kind of dirtbag left, like to alt-right pipeline.
Dirtbag left.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're associated with like that podcast that Matty Healy went on, that he made like comments about Ice Spice with, and so it's all part of this kind of same scene. So it's a very, very internet 2024, and it's gorgeous.
I'm in it. Okay, grand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
I'm
it that
happy.
way.
I've definitely seen mentions of it, but I was like, yeah, I'm not going. I presume this is
Yeah,
bad.
it's
Toxic.
problematic shit for girls. Finally.
Yeah.
Just what we
Effectively.
needed.
But I suppose the whole thing with it is that it's very dead-eyed, so you just have no idea like how sincere anything is. And I think that's what's quite interesting in the lyrics of the song, because I actually was listening to it. I guess Charli does probably by extension move in the same circles as some of the people involved in that scene. But even with the song, I'm not sure what her perspective is on these girls, in the same way that I have no idea what these girls are actually, what their actual intention is. Because she's obviously, I think the lyrics are very hyper specific. It's like the worship Lana Del Rey in her AirPods. She's in her mid-20s, real intelligent, hedonistic with the gravel drawl and dead eyes. And it's very much like zoning in on these women. But I have no idea what her actual opinion is on the Red Scare podcast. So I think it's interesting that it's quite ambiguous. Yeah,
I think it's sort of like painting a portrait of like a kind of woman, which is a dangerous and risky thing to do as a woman in the music industry, because you will be accused of being like anti-feminist, anti-girls supporting girls and so on. But I think the dead-eyedness of what she does within the lyrics, like, I don't know, it suggests to me that she is engaging with this sort of stuff, like ironically, you know, which in itself is very problematic. And, you know, we have those conversations about the 1975 all the time, that there's levels of irony that we accept when it comes to this kind of stuff. And there are levels of irony that we do not accept when it comes to this kind of dirtbag left stuff. But it's like, you know, this one's for all my mean girls. This one's for all my bad girls, break your boyfriend's heart girls. Like it is really hard to know. Like I actually think this song is just camp. Like I think it's playful. I think she's dressing up and playing. And I don't think that it's like an endorsement at all. Because I think if she was actually endorsing anything, she'd probably be more sincere about it. She's not very sincere when it comes to like how she actually thinks people, like when she's making grand statements about like how she thinks people should be living their lives, it's usually just like quite insincere, and it's just kind of like, well, have fun, you know, be a brat. And it's like but then when we move into sincerity, we do get a lot more kind of like depth. So I think this is just like probably the brattiest song on the album. It's like, it's being bitchy, and it's just like, we don't get that these days. Like it's and obviously it's called Mean Girls. And it makes me think of the, like, you know, being kind to someone's face and then being mean behind their back, sort of like, that's the ugliest effing skirt I've ever seen, Regina George stuff. So when she's like, oh, she's all coquettish in the pictures with the flash on, it's like, I think she is actually kind of, you know, breaking that apart and saying, you're not that special. We've been doing this since I was on MySpace. Like, it's not new. Do you know?
She's anorexic and you heard she likes when people say it. Think you already know it, but you don't. This one's for all my mean girls. This one's for all my bad girls. This one's for all my break your boyfriend's heart girls. For all my tearing shit apart girls. This one's for all my mean girls. This one's for all my bad girls. This one's for all my break your boyfriend's heart girls. For all my tearing shit apart girls. Yeah, it's 4 a.m. and she's out there with the razor sharp tongue stuck to skinny cigarettes, causing daddy while she's fingering a gold cross. And she's kind of fucked up, but she's still in vogue. Yeah, she's in her mid-20s, real intelligent. And you hate the fact she's New York City's darling. You say she's problematic, and the way you say it's so fanatic. Think she already knows that you're obsessed.
I think there's like a part of Mean Girls that kind of makes me wonder, is there like an element of parody of kind of like the extremities of Charli's brand and her audience? Because I guess whilst it is like about the Red Scare girls and that culture, there is like an energy of like fuck, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. I'll break anyone's heart when you're listening to like some of Charli's work, and it is kind of part of that. So yeah, I guess there's an element of it that seems like a parodying of herself at her most,
and
like,
even like how it's in conversation with like the 360 music video as well, like the sort of the it girl archetype, and the it girl archetype that we have now is a bit, you know, maybe a bit standoffish or could be perceived as being that. Like, I think all the girls in that video are probably very, very nice people, but the people who aren't within that culture and don't stand them and don't like kind of understand what they're about might look at them and be like, they all just seem mean, you know? So I think it's definitely in conversation with like, what is a modern it girl? What do we think of as being a modern it girl? And how do we save the concept of an it girl? You know, it's important that we have them in the culture. And I agree with her. I think it's very important we have it girls in the culture. Yeah. Otherwise, how will I know that I dress bad? You know? There's one song that I kind of wanted to just like flag, if that's okay, as being the one that I thought was the most beautiful to listen to on my first listen, which is Everything Is Romantic. I just think it's so, I think it's about being in Sicily or certainly somewhere in Italy with George, I think, and just sort of like looking around and like just, I don't know, just she says the line like 4 generations make up a family in it. And I just think that's like, there was just like a really beautiful sort of like image of her looking at what families look like elsewhere and how families function outside of not only her kind of pop bubble, but also like her bubble in the UK or the bubble with like how she grew up or whatever it is. But the thing that got me about it was that musically, I just think it's so, so beautiful. And it's beautiful in that very Charli way, in that very kind of synthetic beauty, just like really tickles your brain, what she's doing with her vocals when she says fall in love again and again, and how she says again instead of again. And it's just, yeah, it's just a really beautiful song.
Fall in love again and again, riding roads doing manual drive. Bad tattoos on leather tan skin, Jesus Christ on a plastic sign. Early nights and white sheets with lace curtains, Capri in the distance. Bad tattoos on leather tan skin, Jesus Christ on a plastic sign. Fall in love again and again, winding roads through manual drive. Bad tattoos on leather tan skin, Jesus Christ on a plastic sign. Fall in love again and again, winding roads through manual drive. Early nights and white sheets with lace curtains, Capri in the distance, in a place that can make you change. Fall in love again and again. Early nights and white sheets with lace curtains, Capri in the distance, in a place that can make you change. Fall in love. Everything is romantic. Oh, everything is romantic. Oh, everything is romantic.
There's so much going on. It's great.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. Definitely PC music vibe there. And El Guincho involved in that as well. So A.G. Cook. So there you go. Okay, so Kelly, I asked you to pick out a few tracks for us. Some previous non-Brat picks maybe. So first one, I'll play first and we can chat about it, is one of the great collaborations that Charli did with a producer that very much vibes with her kind of whole thing, is Muramasa and the song One Night.
You are something special. 20 karat solid gold. What we had was precious, but I had to let you go. We had a connection, but I'm not the type of girl who wants serious affection. It doesn't belong in my world. It was only one night, but I wanna go back to where we were. I just wanna go back to where we were. I just wanna go back to where we were. It was only one night, but I wanna go back to where we were. we were. I just wanna go back to where we were. I just wanna go. Do you wanna go? Do you wanna go? It was only one night.
So this song is like, for me, is a great example of Charlie's ability to write hook after hook. And so you picked one of these as this One Night is one of your favorites.
Yeah, I think for me, this is like my quintessential summer song. I think it's so catchy. The second I hear the like steel drums of that song, I'm like, there's a cocktail in my hand. And like, it's so catchy. And I think it's quite a restrained song at the same time. While it's like an upbeat pop song, it's quite like minimalist, especially in comparison to any of her other stuff that she's been putting out recently. Like it is quite restrained, but it's got all of the ingredients. It's got the one night stand Charlie hedonism, but it's got the afterwards I'm alone in my room sad thinking about you vulnerable Charlie side. And I just think it's one of Maura Massa's best productions as well. I think it's just such a catchy song. Like it be stuck in your head for so long. A really, really great collaboration. I think it brought out the best in both artists.
It's such a good song that even the ad libs are kind of like hooks as well, you know, like they're like so good and so recognizable. Great track. That is, what year was that? That was
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I remember when you worked with us, Kelly, you were a big Pop 2 girly.
Yes.
I'm right. I remember that. So you picked a track from Pop 2. It is Unlock It with Kim Petras and Jay Park. Let's hear this.
Feeling like an astronaut watching the world all alone, just you and I. Roller coaster ride in the fast lane, got the roof down, kiss me hard and now it's pouring rain. Yeah, I can see it in your eyes. Now you feel the same, $1 million babe, tripping on it like propane. Beautiful. Lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it. Unlock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it. Got the key, can you unlock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it. Unlock it, lock it, lock it, lock it, lock it. Got the key, can you unlock it? Caught in the lip lock when we pit stop. Cosmic kiss tastes like cherry maraschino ride. Passenger seat, tropical heat. Ice so red, you could be my Valentino, yeah. If you want my heart, then don't you drop it.
So why'd you pick this song?
I think with Pop 2 in general, it was like the record that I fell in love with Charlie for. I'd always been like a casual fan before that, but I think Pop 2, the production on it is just so phenomenal that it's so interesting. I think Unlock It is a really good example of a track that's like a perfect club song. Like if you play that in a DJ set at the right club, like it will go off so hard. But then the pieces of the track, there's like a tenderness within it. Like you've got the kind of like icy, snowflakey kind of like keys on top of the track, whilst it still sounds like very heavy and clubby. And you've got all of the like motifs of Charlie in there of like roller coaster ride, like she's moving fast once again. But it feels quite delicate. And like, I think, I just think the production on it is fantastic. It works so well with her vocals and makes her like, I suppose the lyrics aren't the most like God knows what she's on about in half of the song, but I think like teamed with the production, it just has this like otherworldly feel that felt, particularly at the time, it felt so exciting to me. I was like, I wasn't hearing anything like that in pop music. So I think that it's true for most of Pop 2, but I think Unlock It, it's just another level. It's such a catchy song. It's so good to sing along with. Like, what are we unlocking? Who knows? But I am singing.
Okay. Okay. Next up is a track from How I'm Feeling Now, Forever.
I love you forever. Said I love you forever. I know in the future we won't see each other. Cold just like December, but I will always love you. I love you forever. Yeah, I love you forever. You take your time, I'll take mine. We'll be fine. No one be here, be here, be here. You when the roof caved in.
like my favorite track of How I'm Feeling Now. I'm a big fan of How I'm Feeling Now. I think it's one of her most exciting albums. And I think I am a sucker for pun intended, for Charli's like soft side, and that album was such a good example of it. And I think like when Forever dropped, it was like peak COVID, like nothing was interesting anymore and nothing exciting was happening. And then Forever dropped, and it was like an oasis of like, oh my God, someone's like taken this period of time and created something really interesting in like in a cool way by collaborating with fans. Like the turnaround on that record was so quick. It felt like, once again, she was adapting to the situation and doing something interesting and experimental with it. And I think like that album is probably one of the only like relics of COVID that I could like, cultural relics of COVID that I can listen to now without like getting the shakes. Yeah. Because it's such a good standalone record. And I think Forever is just, I think it's a very beautiful love song, and about distance. And whilst it's hyper specific to the situation at the time, it stands for I don't know, I still think it represents like meaningful, long lasting love, whatever the reason for distance is. And yeah, I think the production on it, the like weird crashing stuff in the background is really cool. You've got these like sickly sweet vocals on top and very like emotional lyrics against like, yeah, weird crashing sounds in the background. And yeah, I really, really love that one. I think it's great. It's a great example of what you can do under like limitations as well. It shows like when there was very little options for what she could actually do with making music, she still managed to bang something out that was really, really good.
So along with your favorites, I also asked you to pick 3 kind of underrated songs. Oh, so first one is one of the older tracks. One of the early singles is You. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, we got a situation, locked down and I'm trapped in the basement. I'm a victim of replacement, cause you're acting so loud, they're trying to put across your statement. Because I know you struggle, choke when you see love grow.
Yeah, so I guess with that one, I have a little bit of bias because I adore Panda Bear so much. So it's always like a fun combo for me. But I think it's such a like good. It's such a good summary of kind of, I think, early Charli's career. Like, there's so little done to that sample. She's effectively just riffing over the top of it. And it's just so like, it's quite obnoxious, I think, in the way that it's created. And it is quite bratty, and just like the lyrics are very like bragging and insolent, and like, and I just really love it. I think it's such a fun song. I don't know if it's like produced particularly well or put together particularly well, but it is a track that always kind of makes me smile. And I think
it speaks to that era for sure. You know, like we're talking, the discourse is us using a song that's hot right now to like create our own version, and it's on Hype Machine and it's doing really well, kind of thing. Yeah, it has that vibe to it.
It is so blog. Yeah. It is so it is a peak blog song, and I really like it for that. It feels like a relic of a different time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you picked it because it actually gives me a chance just to indulge myself for a second when in the Lindstrom remix, which is a version of the song I love so much. So here's a bit of that.
Yeah, we got a situation, locked down and I'm trapped in the basement. I'm a victim of replacement, cause you're acting so loud, they're trying to put across a statement. Cause we used to be the cool kids, you were old school, I was on the new shit. We were addicted to the rhythm, but we threw it in the flame, and now we never gonna trace it. Now we never gonna trace it.
Anyway, that's a great remix of You as well from Lindstrom. Your next track is also from Pop 2.
I truly am a Pop 2 girly.
Yeah, let's go. This is Out of My Head with Tovlo and Alma.
Drop all my morals, I just wanna sin. I'm out of my head, out of my head. Please get out of my head. Please get out of my need you out. Need you out. Party with my tears. Sway with my fears. Yeah. Let them try, get me high, I'll get by if I get enough. Yeah. Let them try, get me high, I'll get by with a little love. And don't give me pills and potions and terrible things. Heart on the floor when the telephone rings. All of the lies I just wanna believe. Drop all my morals, I just wanna sin. I'm out of my head.
That's one of those tracks that I just was like, I don't understand how this isn't like a major chart hit. At the time, it's so catchy. It's such a loopable song that like whenever I listen to it like 4 or 5 times in a row. I guess it's quite short as well, so it's made for that. But I think it's a great collaboration. Perfectly captures like I'm out having fun, but I'm in the club, but my brain is stuck thinking about someone that I shouldn't be thinking about. It's like, I think the lyrics are good. The emotions are, it's like dancey and catchy, but like you're sad. You're with them. You're like, please stop thinking about that person. And I think it's all three of them like at their best as well. It's one of my favorite collaborations with her.
Great. Okay, another track then to finish off from How I'm Feeling Now, which is Detonate.
Myself alone. Why should you love me? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just feeling confused. My emotions get blue. How to push them all through. Know you hope that I'll prove everything will stay cool, but I can't promise that's true, 'cause my emotions are blue. Hurt me, no you won't hurt me. I'm about to detonate, pull you close and then I'll be gone. Sorry, never say sorry. All my silence resonates, think you with me, but you're wrong.
Yeah, so I guess with Detonate, firstly, I just love the production. I think it's so beautifully produced. It's like almost like ambient-y. It's like that vegan kind of sound that was like emerging around that time that I really love. It's quite a tender song. And I think, in comparison to the rest of the record as well, where you've got like lots of kind of open expressions of love and affection, it's like an interesting like underline for the rest of the record of like, okay, yes, I have all this love for this person that's so strong and all this. And then with Detonate, it's like that admission of it doesn't matter how much I might love this person, I might explode this and I can't help it and I don't want to. So I think it's like, it's an interesting undercutting of the rest of the record. And it's also just beautiful. So yeah.
Okay, well that's brilliant. I have a Charli XCX playlist as well that I'll share if you have. Because what I did is this week is I listened to everything she's ever done and I added everything I loved into a playlist, and there's quite a lot of it, nearly 2 hours of music there. As we know, I mean, I think it's only gonna, hopefully, this isn't the end of Charli's discourse era either this year. Brat is going to continue throughout the year, and it's a really I think it's her best.
I think
album,
in a year where both Taylor Swift and Beyonce have released albums, there is a good chance that this will end up coming out as the biggest album of the year. Not maybe in terms of sales or streams or anything, but in terms of capturing a moment for an artist, and also capturing a kind of a zeitgeist moment. I think Charli might be the pop girly that comes out on top. For the people who are really into it, which is really exciting. I'm so excited for our pal Charli. Like, we're so proud of her.
Yeah, I think it's the first big pop album of the year that's really, really grabbed me. I think I've been mostly disappointed so far this year, or stuff just hasn't really had staying value. I enjoyed the Billie Eilish record, I guess, but I think this is the first one that's really, of the big anticipated pop albums, this is the first one where I'm like, perfect, no notes. This couldn't have delivered more this matched the hype.
Yeah. And
basically.
as a kind of an album cycle as well, it has been actually quite, I know there's been a little bit of discourse from people from another fandom about who's talking about who and why, but it's been actually really refreshing to have an album that is kind of just being talked about for its own sake, and not in terms of what does it mean and decoding things and what does this mean for pop music and so on. Like it really does feel like the thing that is being written about and spoken about this album is how good the music is, and I sort of didn't realize how absent that kind of criticism has been with pop music this year until this has come out. So it's been really nice to just have a little bit less discourse and a little bit more music. Even though I love the discourse, I live for the discourse. It's been nice to take a little bit of a break from it.
Before you go, Kelly, is there anything you'd like to point at for your current life's work, and anything you'd like to get more eyeballs on, or people who should check?
Yeah, so I'm the editor over at thevinylfactory.com. If anyone wants some interesting information about vinyl, there's lots of my writing up there. And yeah, just I'm DJing in the Queen Adelaide in Bethnal Green this week, and I'll be playing Charli XCX songs. So if anyone's about, wants to go to that, come along for a bop.
Yeah.
Thanks,
okay,
Kelly.
brilliant. Thanks so much, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a mil.
It's alright to just admit that I'm the fantasy. You're obsessed and just confess it, 'cause it's obvious. I'm your number one. I'm your number one. I'm your number one. Yeah, I'm just living that life. Bondage, car, classic, but it's still pop. I get money, you get mad because the bank's up. Yeah, I know your little secret, put your hands up. It's so obvious. I'm your number one. Life bondage, car, classic in your eardrums. Why you lying? You won't fuck unless she famous. Do that little dance without it, you can nameless.
Thanks to Kelly for coming on and talking all things Brat and Charli XCX. As I mentioned at the end there, I have a Charli XCX playlist. If you want access to that, it'll be in the Patreon post for this podcast episode. So patreon.com/909. Support us. We've had some new signups recently, so welcome to you guys. And also you get the podcast ad free as well on that feed. And so yeah, best place to get it if you like what we're doing. And yeah, so Andrea, we will be back in the coming weeks, probably next week, I'd say, but we'll see. As we're saying, it's summertime vibe. We don't get to do a podcast every week in the summer usually for whatever reason, but it's nice to dip in and have a very current thing to talk about. And I've been really enjoying Brat this past week, and as I mentioned, the Discord has as well. But there's lots happening. We're getting into festival era. Forbidden Fruit and AVA and Open Ear have been and gone. There's plenty coming up in the next few weeks, like Beyond the Pale, and Pride is on, and so there's lots happening and lots to discuss.
The Eras
so,
tour is coming to Dublin.
What day is that?
That's Pride weekend.
July. It is Pride weekend. Okay, wow, yeah, it's real soon. Okay, are you going? No,
I'd like to go. If anyone wants to send me. Hi out there, send me. But no, I'm not going.
Okay, all right, okay, brilliant. All right, thanks for listening to the 99 podcast. We'll be back soon. Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, Niall. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, listener.
Thanks, Georgia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.